this is about ethnicity, but I'm dyslexic, I'm neurodiverse, and the older I get, the more I realise quite how valuable my diversity is. I see things that others don't, and it is an absolute superpower. And that's the same across the piece. It's like if everybody looks the same, if everybody thinks the same, if everyone acts the same, no one's bringing something different to the party. So the third thing is simply that the very act of doing this will make you better. And that was so true with us. I critically engaged with the subject matter. I had to sit down and work through those 23 questions and areas and properly, ask myself some hard questions about my business. But in doing that, stuff properly crystallized within my mind, and I could see the gaps I could never do before. So the simple act of doing it, the simple act of being on this call is that first brilliant fundamental step. But by doing the process, you get to understand it, you get to be better, and you get to help improve the industry, which is a great feeling. Is it easy? No, it's not, but rightly so, rightly so. And what I would just suggest is commit to it. I did. I was like, right, I'm blocking out 2 days, or, it was at least 2 days, I'd say. And I was like, it's like I'm on holiday and I'm just going to lock myself away and I'm going to focus on this. But it has paid dividends in so many ways. My team is super engaged. They're super behind it. They love working for a values-led business that cares about this stuff, and it's absolutely more than skin deep with us. We've always been values-led, but I could not recommend it more, and to put the hard yards in, essentially. And I didn't know if we were going to get it, and that wasn't the point actually for me. It was the point of, by doing it, whether we've achieved the status or not, it produced value for me regardless, because it made me realize how far we had to go and what we needed to do. So my fourth major overarching point is to make it your own. And yes, you can do what I imagine quite a few people do, which is look up best practice in each of those areas and add those things in as policies. We didn't do that. We very much started with our own values and purpose and said, what can we build upon that we do? What can we do better? And I thought I'd just mention a few of these things. And what's really unusual when talking to competitors is I'm saying to you, steal them, use them. If they help you, if they help the industry, do the same. So a couple of things we did. We committed to only work with businesses who are actively working towards the UN Sustainable Goals. My dyslexia means, I've said on a podcast before, I've called them the UN STDs instead of the STGs. See, I still can't say it. I'm a dyslexic, I can't do acronyms. But I'll go for the Sustainable Development Goals instead. But by only working for those types of businesses and knowing that they're supporting gender equality or reduced inequalities generally, you're doing the right thing. Look at your own values and behaviours, and we have a crucial document, a values and behaviours document. Each value and the behaviours we expect and the behaviours we don't accept. And that is signed not only by every employee, but by every client, by every supplier, by every freelancer or cohort member. And right from the off, we say, these are our values. If you want to work with us in any capacity, you've got to be on board. We do something called the 5 personal needs. So we ask everybody who joins us to give us their 5 personal needs. So assuming they, get the basics covered, they're happy with their salary, etc. It's like, what can we do for you as a human being, an individual? What's important to you? Is it, like for me, having the balance with my time with kids? Is it ensuring you're culturally enriched? Is it, it could be anything. And then they review us against those. But by asking those questions, people share what's important to them. And that means people from all backgrounds feel welcome and we understand what's important to them. We've done something very simple in that we've created a policy where people can swap standard bank holidays for any other religious holidays, festivals or celebrations that are important to them, from kind of Diwali to Pride, for example. I mean, this some of these don't cost anything, some of them do. This is an expensive one, but honest to God, it's the most amazing thing that we do in terms of how we've all developed as human beings, me included. But we coach everybody fortnightly, everybody in the company. And I have personally overcome lifelong issues and problems, things that used to set me off, I can now deal with. As soon as there are any issues within the team, we can sort them out with a trained coach. It is so worth the investment. But I understand that's a big financial commitment, but it also means that we can again use those sessions, and it's all hyper confidential with a coach, but to support people who might have, have had bad experiences before, and we can make sure the environment is right. We have a team social culture that isn't booze related. It doesn't mean people don't drink. It doesn't mean we're anti-drinking, but we just make sure that it's truly open and there's a lot of cultural exploration so that people don't feel alienated if they perhaps don't drink from a religious perspective. We ask at the end of every management meeting and every board meeting, we properly ask it, do we believe we have made the right decisions in terms of people, planet, and profit, as well as profit, at the end of every meeting. And if anyone just does a yes without thinking, I ask it again to make sure people properly are asking that question. We actively task our recruitment partner to ensure we have a proper diverse mix, and I mean properly. And in fact, the partner we use is exceptional because we know she's as committed to this as we are. So we've never actually needed to ask. But what I would say is, if you don't have a partner that is committed, that you should. We've introduced a virtual intern program, and obviously that's been required during lockdown, but ongoing we will take interns virtually so that they're not prohibited, perhaps because they live in another part of the country and they financially can't afford it, even though they're paid internships. And there's a bunch of other stuff, but I'm conscious of time, but I can send you a list if it's helpful. But the last thing I would just say is, don't be scared. Don't be scared. I get scared of saying the wrong thing. I get worried about BME versus BAME versus non-white versus people of colour. I ask the people of colour to be understanding that we're trying to get this right, but we'll never fully understand how it feels to be in this industry and to have felt like an outsider. And I just would never want white people to not do the right thing because they're scared of getting it wrong. So there's my little spiel. Hope that wasn't too long, sorry.
That was perfect. Thank you so much, Nick. That was really valuable insights in there. And I think what it demonstrated is that the blueprint and even the process of applying for the mark is so much more than whether you hire Black or Asian or mixed race people. It's so much more than that. And I think maybe at initial glance that seems like what it is about, but it's so in depth that actually what you mention is vital, because it forces you to look at every aspect of your business.
Yeah.
And all the things that you're doing, and that is such a worthwhile exercise as a business owner, regardless of anything else, whether you get the mark or you don't, as you say. So that was a great illustration, I think. Thank you very much. Julian, I will pass over to you.
Thank you. There was something you said there, Nick, about applying for the blueprint makes you better just by doing so, and I think that is so important. There are sort of 40 questions in the application form that range from culture, range from the kind of work you do, range from recruitment practices. So just having all that in one place actually, it does make you sort of collect everything together and understand how to go forward. So I think just the mere act of answering those questions. And I think a piece of advice that I'll give as well is, if you're still having questions about the readiness of the company to do it, it actually makes sense to just answer those questions internally anyway, before making that final decision. But that would collect all the thoughts together, and sort of help you move forward. And as far as why we applied for it, I think the most important thing for us was this was the first time there was I guess, a framework and an organization that held agencies and companies accountable. I think accountability was the most important thing for us. There are many companies across the UK that are, smaller than us. We're about 30 people in the UK. We don't have a dedicated HR team. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the same situation and smaller. And having an organization that does that work of putting these parameters in, putting these benchmarks in, putting that guidance in is so helpful. I think the importance of the blueprint for us was, for a long time, for the last sort of 2-3 years or even more, there was just a lot of lip service done around diversity and inclusion in public relations. I think there was a lot of intention, but not enough action. Sometimes that was due to sort of a lack of understanding, a lack of education, a lack of passion, and having sort of the MEPR pros and the blueprint and all the work that went on behind it to publish these guidances and do that hard work, the legwork of allowing agencies and practitioners to actually see that, yeah, you can do it. You can begin this journey. You can start. Here are some primers. Here are some pointers. Let's go. That's so important to why we decided to do it. As an agency, we sort of approached diversity and inclusion from a very, I guess, ad hoc approach, and that was based on the specific passions individuals in the agency had to do things differently for Manifest. We weren't even thinking necessarily about the industry at large. It was, all right, if we have the value of diversity and inclusion, that we believe our work should be representative of the communities we serve. We believe, as Nik was saying, that to avoid groupthink, we need to bring people of different backgrounds in. That was super important for us. And then the blueprint allowed us to codify that, to actually ensure that, this is a way of working that we can then bring to our offices in Manchester, offices in New York, or offices elsewhere. And that even if, for whatever reason, everyone at Manifest now leaves, it still remains a company value. I think there is a tendency at times for diversity and inclusion to be siloed to one or two individuals in a company. And if that individual leaves, then it suddenly just disappears. So the blueprint is super helpful to just really embed D&I in the company, especially for folks who may not be necessarily that conversant or that personally passionate about the topic. So for us, I think I've said this before, it was codifying some of these practices we were doing already, and helping us become more accountable. And I think one thing that I find maybe some folks do not know about the application process, but also getting the status, is the action plan that is provided afterwards. So it's not just it's not a mark that you sort of get and you put on your email signature and that's it. There is an action plan to do better and to measure all the things, all those 23 points. There is a very clear and direct action plan that is worked on by the team that evaluates the application. So it's very active. It's renewed every 2 years. So you can't just rest on your laurels and be like, yeah, we got it. It's over. We're done. We've won diversity. That's not the case. It's always about progress, always about moving forward, always about accountability, always about measurement. So I think that for us, that was a big draw, a big deal. And I think it really helps when agencies are scoping out, if they want to do this, the idea that you're going to be given this action plan to address the weaknesses, blind spots, but also to ensure that you don't fall off the strengths you may have in particular areas. I think for us, that's the key. And I think it also starts the agency on a journey to be more obviously to be more accountable, but also to never lose sight of the general conversation and the ongoing conversations, both in the UK but also globally, around diversity and inclusion. As you know, this past summer has, I guess, caused everyone to really stand up and open their eyes and ears to what's been going on. And I think applying for the blueprint and being engaged with those commitments makes you a better agency, a more sort of equitable agency, but also it causes everyone in the agency to be better people, to be better citizens. And that's, for us, also super important. These are conversations that are about values, but also conversations that sometimes could be political in nature as well. And if you have engaged staff, I think you do better work, even if you're doing consumer work and not necessarily public affairs. When you have engaged staff, you produce better work, you produce more rounded work, and you also just get better staff that way. So yeah, I think if I want to boil it down, as Nik said, don't be afraid to do it. If you have questions on the strengths you have, if you want to, if you're not sure you want to do it anyway, answer those questions. Look at the commitments that are already on the website, and find out ways you can bolster your team and your ways of working, your HR department if you have one. It's not too late to start doing that hard work, that groundwork, to make yourselves, stronger. But yeah, it's worth it. If there's anything I've learned, it's worth it. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Julian. I think, yeah, I echo what you say. It really is worth it, and it is an in-depth process, but it is one it's a lasting process, and obviously you mentioned the fact that it's ongoing, and it isn't an award that you just get and you get left to it. Like, the engagement that you have from the Blueprint team, the ongoing emails, the updates, the training, it's a framework which is robust, and it's there to help you as much as possible. And I think that's what is so significant about this, I think, for me, is that everything about it is set up to help you achieve it. It's not a case of they're trying to catch you out. It's not a case of they're just deliberately making it difficult for you. It's literally there to say, here are all the tools, here is all the support, talk to us, work with us, let's do this together. And it feels like a very collaborative movement to be a part of, I think. So thank you both for those sessions. I have a few questions of discussion points I thought maybe we could sort of talk over between us before I open the questions up to the wider participants. One of the things that has struck me recently, I just finished a book, an autobiography by Skin, who is the lead singer of a band called Skunk and Nancy from the 90s.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, and I was a massive fan when I was, in my youth. But there was a line in it towards the end of the book that really stuck with me. And she says, it feels like the world is embracing diversity, but we're still fighting racism. And I really liked that, because I thought, yeah, it's a really good point. It's like we're trying to be more diverse, but there's still a massive fight happening, and trying to marry those two up sometimes feels difficult. And I wonder what your thoughts are on whether we are trying to fight racism with diversity, for want of a better word, and actually instead of fighting racism in and of itself, but trying to be diverse and therefore thinking that is the way out of racism.
Wow, I think I've not thought about it like that, but I agree that. And it's not just in PR, it's not just in the professional industries, but this idea that just by embracing the value of diversity, or just by being a diverse agency or country or workplace, that eliminates, or that necessarily fight racism. I think that's a fallacy. And I think that's, and this year, or, you know, since the summer, I think it's something I've mentioned in webinars before, that we've tried to separate the need for diversity and inclusion from the racism in society. So, because I think racism is such a strong word, you know, and a lot of people feel like it's a dirty word. It's a word that just belongs to conversations about neo-Nazis and skinheads, and not the workplace. And because our definition of racism has been so narrow, we've really not addressed the fact that racism does occur in many ways, big and small, in the workplace, from microaggressions to sort of outright blatant racism. And I think part of the work in fighting racism also involves I guess a more critical understanding of our society in general, sort of outside work. And I don't think our society, and this is not to just place blame on the UK alone, I think generally, I don't think societies are that honest with the societal issues they have, one being racism here, but also classism in the UK as well, I think is something that we just do not engage with on a critical level. And so sometimes the push to diversity just then becomes about numbers and quotas and representation. I think the term representation sometimes is also a flaw, where we just think that, okay, if you get symbolic change, then that fixes things. So if we do not understand why the pipeline is not diverse, then we're never really going to fix the long-term problems. And the reasons the pipeline is not diverse are issues that are outside our purview and outside our ability to fully change. So, and I also think that there is, maybe it's just by nature of the kind of work we do, I think sometimes businesses feel like they want to have total control of a solution, that if everybody comes together and does this one thing, we'll fix it forever. and I think we need to get out of that mind frame, that yes, we can have diverse and inclusive businesses that are sustainable in that diversity, but we might not necessarily change society in the short term. And I think it's okay to I think we need to get into a point where we're fine with that we're on the road to progress, but we need to be satisfied that it's impossible for us to effect global change all at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of years of systematic racism to undo. That can't be undone by one organisation, you know, doing one thing. You know, we can, like Nik said before, we can all play our part, and everybody playing a part does make a big change. But you know, we have to get comfortable with our limitations and what we can and can't.
And it's education. I mean, you touched on this, Julian. There's forgive me for saying it's not black and white. You know, racist, very easy to go, racists are bad. There are lots of people who I wouldn't class as racists at all, but who simply are ignorant. And there's a massive difference. So that's why diversity is important as a route to dealing with racism. And you know, my FD, she found the session post getting the blueprint when Elizabeth spent a day with us. She just said it was transformational for her. She said she'd always seen herself as kind of colorblind, you know, as in she just saw people she never saw, and she's Jewish, you know, herself, so she's experienced, you know, some things herself, and she just, the scales fell from her eyes, and she was like, I'd never thought of it from that perspective, and now that we're talking about this, I can understand actually that maybe some things that I've done could have been really offensive, but I would never call her a racist. She never would have done. So for me, dealing with diversity is an important route to tackling racism. It's not, obviously it's not the silver bullet, but there is definitely, you know, a process. And I remember we were totally pulled up on our application because we talked about chemistry and the importance of chemistry. And And now I'm not, you know, I've evolved so much in this process and learned. And of course, chemistry can be a dangerous thing because you can end up being drawn to the same people. But I would never have really understood that had I not been through this process. And that's why I love Julian's line of, you know, now we see people as culture ads. And that's the term you used, wasn't it? I just loved it. And and that's what we see now. And it's just joyous. But unless you kind of embrace this stuff, you could inadvertently be being part of the problem, never intentionally, never as a racist, but just simply through never having experienced some of these things yourself, or believing that people are ultimately good and that this stuff happens in parts of the world or parts of the country, or, you know, parts of even your local town that you're not associated with.
Yeah. So moving on from that slightly, there are 3 new agencies joining us as another full blueprinted agency, Stronger Stories, and then both Circle and Ready 10 are ally agencies.
Brilliant.
Which is lovely. So we've got 6. It's amazing, which I think is a great achievement in the first year, especially considering everything that's going on at the moment. But what I would say is that, and obviously coming at this from being based in Yorkshire up north, is how important is the need to get agencies outside of London, and how do we engage with those agencies, and how do we make sure that this is as much a call to arms for them as it is for that kind of London-centric bubble?
Oh no, yeah, I think just agencies in London tend to, it's not new. We tend to forget that agencies outside London exist and that there is life outside, you know, outside
M25.
Outside the M25. And also there are different nuances about diversity outside London as well. And I think there's also this idea that London being very ethnically diverse leads to the idea that there's this big contrast with the rest of the country. And yes, in some ways there is, but also in many large cities in the UK, especially in England, there are those nuances that are just not there in London. So I do think it's important for you know, agencies outside London to understand how they can best serve those communities and be seen by members in their communities as being representative. And I think that's super important. So I'm excited that the next sort of chapter of moving the conversation forward on D&I in the UK goes beyond London and goes beyond England. We talk about Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland as well, with all those different nuances. So yeah, it's not a London thing.
Yeah, I think that's really important, isn't it? Because I mean, Leeds is an amazingly diverse city. We have Bradford next door. You know, there's a lot of wonderful culturally multicultural cities around us. And it would be great to see that represented in our agencies as well, and try and drive that message up here as much as, you know, in the PR community in the north generally, you know, obviously Yorkshire and Lincolnshire, but definitely in the north. I
think it should be reflected in targets as well. I don't think it's part of the blueprint to have to release your targets. You have to sorry, I can't think of the word. We have to publish our diversity figures, and we're actually publishing ours on Monday, actually, but with targets as well. And I don't think you have to do targets, but we're doing targets, and we're aiming. Our ultimate aim is 40% non-white, with 30% in senior positions, and there's a kind of a step in between to get there, because actually the 40% non-white is relatively easy. The 30% at senior positions is hard, because a lot of people have literally been pushed out of the industry before they get to that position. But we went with 40% because that is representative of London. So we were like, it doesn't matter about national averages. This is the city we are based in. So therefore, we need to be representative of that. And I think it's important, wherever people are, to have targets or an ambition that's related to their local population. Equally, if we were to set up a Cornish operation, it would be impossible to hit 40%. be a me representation in Cornwall, because you just would find it impossible to find the right people. So I think it's being reflective of that as well is important.
Yeah.
And actually, one more thing, for me, we've teamed up with Taylor Bennett Foundation, which are great in many ways, but one of the issues we've had is a lot of the candidates, they've come from some of the best private schools in the country, which I've had a real issue with, because I'm a bit like, this isn't just about skin tone, it is also about giving people opportunities for progression that they might not have had. So that's why we've brought in different things like the virtual internship and other things. So I would also just encourage people to think about that stuff. And like I say, the only reason I'm thinking about this stuff now is because I've done the blueprint process, and it's got me thinking in ways that I never would have done before. But every type of representation is important. And I was having a discussion with someone about a young lad with us, and he misses his, whatever the expression is, your T's and your whatever. That's I can't, like I say, the dyslexic in me is struggling with some of these things, but drops his T's. Is that what people say? Strong, and it's like, no, but that's right. We want people like that in this business, because these are representative of the people we serve ultimately. So it's all really important.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who's modified my accent significantly since I left the wilds of Ayrshire, I can definitely relate to that. Like, if my accent is very, very different now. It's slower, it's, more well-spoken, it's got weird twangs from all the different places I've lived in, but it is very different, because I have what is even in Scotland referred to as quite a rough accent. So, and that does go against you, things like that are, you do need to consider them.
I think you've got a lovely accent.
Well, it's lovely now, but I mean, if I were to launch back into my my more native brogue, for example, I think I don't think MD would understand me, but yeah, it's funny how you modify these things. Just conscious of time, we've just got sort of one more question, and then I'll open it up. Nik, you mentioned collaboration in your session. How valuable and how necessary is that? Because we are a competitive sector, there's a lot of competitive agencies, but I think in this particularly, what scope is there for collaboration, and how should we foster that, and for agencies maybe interested in applying?
It's essential. Sorry, I think there's like it's essential. Honestly, anyone on this call, message me. I'll share with you whatever I can. None of this is IP. The more we share, the better we all do. An example of that is actually today. I think, Julian, you were on an email I sent, and I think Alex might have come back. But for example, we do this rolling intern program, and we have people come with us for a month. And I was just like, it's because we're quite a top-heavy business, because we're a consultancy, we can't hire half the good people we have. So I went out to all the agency owners and chief heads that I know. In fact, both of you, I went to you last, didn't I, Sarah? And I said, look, I've got these brilliant people. Can we set up a group whereby we pass interns, on? That just because someone's time with us is ending, doesn't mean that we don't have a pastoral role in supporting these individuals still. So having, someone learn something with us, I wouldn't be able to go, right, actually, I think they'd be brilliant with you, Sarah or Julian, or any of, I went to about 30 different agencies and had such a brilliant response. And that's open collaboration. That's saying, right, and one of the people we've just had is clearly neurodiverse, but is brilliant, but, has to be in the right kind of environment. And I think some business owners might go, well, we don't want them, we don't want them. Whereas I hope other people go, this is an opportunity where we can do something, and actually to also see that this young man has huge potential if he's in the right environment. So it's things like that. That's open collaboration, sharing of talent, and that of course will benefit these individuals, but also will enrich all of us. So yeah, collaboration is so important, and that's why I always say on these matters, if anyone wants to talk to me, speak to me, message me, I'm totally open to sharing everything and anything in this area.
Within context.
Yeah, within context.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo the same thing. A lot of people are doing great work, and there's so much knowledge sharing, across industries as well. And yeah, I do think this year especially has marked this sort of change in being quite innovative around D&I. So we're open as well to sharing that, and there's just so much resource out there, from podcasts to books to articles, that are being generated by folks in the industry. That I'm hopeful that the work will become a lot more easier and a lot more interdependent going forward.
Amazing. Thank you both. Okay, are there any questions from participants who'd like to ask? If you want to just unmute yourself and ask away any questions.
Hi Sarah, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi Taylor.
Sorry, catchphrase of 2020. Basically, I work for quite a small agency, also in Leeds, and we have invested in Black-owned businesses, in talent pipeline. We're collaborating with Leeds Beckett Uni, and like looking at mentoring and things like that, as well as changing our application process and working with charities, etc. So we can kind of see firsthand the impact that that money that we're putting into it has. And I guess what I'm asking, because the fee for Blueprint is probably the thing that puts us off, not that we don't want to spend that money, but that perhaps in a small agency, there's other ways that might have a bigger impact. So I want to ask about, kind of behind the Blueprint and where the money goes, and whether it's BME PR pros and kind of, that process, if I can.
Yeah. Do either of you want to take that, or?
Well, I'll have a go at it. There's two ways to see it. Firstly is I totally understand we all had to make those choices as well, but I would say that it was money incredibly well spent in terms of us spotting our gaps, our blind spots, etc., that we could have paid 5 times that amount. So even though it looks like it's an application fee, it's not necessarily. And then, as Sarah pointed out before, there's loads that came with it. Full day training session. We've got a follow up with Elizabeth next week. Courses, training, discounts on other staff. So you get your money back. But it's so all that money that you pay essentially just goes towards keeping the machine running, and it breaks my heart with Elizabeth. She's spoken about this, I'm not giving anything away, but she spent over $3,000 of her own money to create this. And this is a woman that doesn't run a massive agency. She isn't sitting there in a fancy pad in central London. She got off her own back and decided to do this, and it means she can earn less money because she's a freelancer, and she dug in her own pocket, and it breaks it. Honestly, it made me cry when the first time I heard that. So this money is the bare minimum, frankly, that's just needed to actually keep the system going. And nobody takes, and I know you're not saying that, by the way, I'm just kind of putting it in context. It's not like people are sitting there getting rich off it. It's to ensure that this isn't a marketing initiative, you can stick on your website and it's like winning an award. It's so that you can be served well and can get the information and the tools that you as an organization need. So I guess that's what I would say on it. I don't know if you've got any builds, Julian or Sarah.
Yeah, I'm just going to add that, look at it as an investment in the team, look at it as personnel development as well. And for small agencies, when you consider all that you're going to learn about yourself, about your agency, and then the work that you could do with the action plan, I do think that it is worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah, I would add to that I'm also a small agency, so I have 4 people, and that was a consideration for us as well, actually, because I completely see where you're coming from with it. But in all honesty, it ended up being a very minor part from a significant consideration for us, because actually, cash flow, the way things are at the moment, what Nick says about what we got for it, essentially, in terms of not the mark, but the support. We've got an action plan, we've got training, we've got access to experts should we need to, sound, a sounding board for anything. But so from an advisory point of view now, as Blueprint advisors, this was something we spent quite a bit of time on. We really tried to think about the impact of charging for it, and shouldn't we, what should that fee structure look like, how do we make sure that small agencies aren't sort of left out by it, how can it be as inclusive as possible. And that was something we were quite focused on achieving in some kind of scale that worked for everybody. So I would say that don't let it put you off doing it. If it is a concern, reach out to the Blueprint. And in terms of the Blueprint itself, and I know part of your question was, where does the money go? It goes back into the Blueprint and actually paying for contributors, paying for the project managers. Like, it helps the machine run, as Nick says, so it's not a profit-making machine. It goes to paying generally black PR pros, actually. So it's trying to make sure that people are paid fairly for the work that they do. So I would say that, I'm happy to chat to you further about it, but I would also say that do get in contact with someone at the Blueprint if that is a concern. They can talk you through options as well.
Thank you very much, guys. I didn't think at any point it was about profit. I just wanted to know more about whether it went to BME, PR pros, and mentoring or stuff like that. So
yeah,
you've answered that.
So the Blueprint is like a separate company.
Okay.
So they're kind of two different companies now. So the Blueprint is a company in and of itself. So that's what helps keep it going.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, a hard one for Julian. Go on. He's looking too casual there. A really hard one for Julian. Make him earn his supper.
I would say congratulations to Julian for becoming a UK citizen today. Well done, mate.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, it's a good day. I should pop some champagne later on, actually.
Yes, there's some English sparkling cider. I don't know, is that a thing? I have one question, actually. So if people are interested in the Blueprint, but they're maybe at a junior position, how can they approach senior members of the team to say, this is something that I think we should go for? And how do they present that idea, and how can they help convince like a senior management team or director that this is worthwhile going for?
Interesting. I think one of the, I guess, underutilized resources in the Blueprint is the FAQ section on the website. Actually, it's detailed, and it's brilliant with the questions that I guess non-believers, that's a strong word, but the questions that non-believers may have about the utility and efficacy of the Blueprint. So I do think if one wants to convince a key decision maker about it, utilizing the FAQ section on the Blueprint website is a really good resource, because it just bounces back all of the kind of questions that come out of the lack of understanding of what it's all about. So use that, and also understand that, as I said, after the application, after ally status or full mark status, you get an action plan. It's active work. It's not just a sticker.
What I would just say is, this won't work unless the senior team are fully bought into this. So I would say that. It was very interesting in this talk that I did, or I opened out after we got the Blueprint and said, if anyone wants to know about this, I'm going to be free at this time, join a call, very much kind of like this. And there was, I think, like 7 or 8 agencies, and all of them were either the kind of managing partners or CEOs or founders. And then one was actually a really kind of junior person that the CEO had sent. And I was like, it doesn't bode too well, because you've got to really want this. Not, and I'm not want it as in I need that mark on my website, but you've got to put the hard work in. And like we've all said, it pays off, not just in terms of feeling great, but you know, it pays off. It makes you a better business. So if you are a junior person, do go and talk to your senior team about it. Talk about the importance of it, why you believe in it. Talk about it in terms of your company's own values. But if they say, yeah, you go away and do it, it's not going to happen, because it has to come from, it has to come from the top, and it has to be truly felt by that business and everybody in it, or else it will clearly be seen as just trying to tick a box, and nobody wants that.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I think that's you definitely have to understand why you want to do it. I think you have to understand your reasonings as to why you're applying, like, and that is sometimes the hardest bit of self-reflection to do. It's like, why am I actually going for this? Is it so I can just go, hey, look at me, I've got it? Or is it because you do feel like you want to make change? And I think it's it may be off-putting for some people when we say it's hard work, because I know we've said that a few times, the three of us, that it is hard, and that can be off-putting, but it's rewarding over hard. It's necessary, but it's rewarding, I think, in multiple ways, as Nik has said. So I would say definitely, if you are thinking of applying, or you think your agency should apply, then either, you know, contact one of us. We're happy to talk to you. Reach out to Blueprint directly, or, you know, just download the application pack and at least see what it's all about, I think. Any final questions before we finish up? No. Hello?
There might be an issue with your mic.
Yep.
Yeah, you might have to put it on. You might have to put it on chat. If you put it on chat, we can't hear it at all. We'll while you're writing your question, what I will say is I was appalled at one of the recent many award ceremonies that we have in our industry about who won the diversity award. And there are places where you can go and fake it, and there are places where you can't. And you can't on this, and that's for brilliant reasons. This is about betterment. This is an investment in your own business and in your people. This will help, you know, you, the industry, the world be better. This isn't just about a pat. Well, it's not at all about a pat on the back. So there's just a massive difference between, you know, applying for an award for your diversity and being awarded the mark or the status for this. And I even think we should, it's not about judges with this, it's about, you know, auditors, really. It's much more that kind of thing. So I hope I've given you some time to...
I've not had a message come in, Matthew. If you do still have a question, drop us an email or tweet us, or, you know, if you, oh, there we go, hang on. As agency owners, what have been the most challenging parts of completing the entry, and also what would you consider as being the main benefit?
The most challenging, I think, for me is once you open the book on this, you realise how far you've got to go. So, but that's also the most rewarding bit. So we were given an action plan, but the action plan's gone from what it was to being a completely different document for us, because I can see so much more potential everywhere and ways we can continuously improve. So at points it can seem like it's just too big, but just take, you know, bite-sized chunks. And that's what we do now with our action plan. We have it, and I have a simple color coding on this document, and the colors relate to what we've achieved before the latest board meeting, what's the next priority. And we're slowly turning, you know, what's already been done, and we're slowly turning those colors. And sometimes we turn only one block the right color, and sometimes we turn 5, but it feels like it's all manageable. And then I say the biggest benefit, like I said, is opening your eyes to the potential. And our business has bucked the trend. You know, we have grown by 50% in COVID, and we did that by narrowing ourselves rather than expanding. We did it by saying, no, we won't take on clients who aren't aligned with our values. No, we won't take on people who aren't aligned with our values. And that has drawn people to us, brilliant team members, brilliant clients who genuinely want to be better. So yes, it's an investment in terms of money out, but it is truly an investment back in terms of your business and your own potential, and the people that you want to work with are the ones that will be drawn to you. And actually that was the biggest thing that Elizabeth said to us. She was like, by God, do I believe in all these things you're saying, but you don't say it on your website. I was like, bing, you know, narratives are there for everyone to see. Just, you know, put it out there.
For that as well, funnily enough, I was like, we'd do this and we'd have that, and she was like, why are you not telling anybody this? And it felt, do you know, it felt a bit like bragging, and I think that's what I was a bit.
Yeah, but it's like people need to know. And now suddenly, you know, the best talent is coming to us. The best companies are coming to us because they're like, we want to be better, help us. Or we want to be part of this. We believe in you. So it has been phenomenal. It feels big, but do it in bite size. You know, take the time to do it right. And it's so rewarding.
Julian, any final thoughts on that? I'm conscious of time and I just want to.
Yeah, challenge it is a strong word. I think it's thorough. It's thorough, and I think that's also a benefit in the sense that once you finish that application process, even the I guess the collection of all the data you need for that application process makes you a stronger agency. So everything about it is all about strength and about progress. So.
Yeah. I think for me the final thing as a main benefit was how involved the team got and how much it meant to them.
Yeah.
And the feedback that they got when we did our training session, and one of the questions that were asked, and I was really surprised by some of the answers that they gave, and that for me confirmed that I'd done the right thing. I'd done the right thing by my business, I'd done the right thing by my team, and they were with me, and I knew they were with me, and they wanted to be. And I think that was a really lovely experience as a business owner and a small business owner as well, to have that kind of know that they had my back and they were on this as much as I was. So yeah, I think that was a main benefit. Thank you. All right, we are just a few minutes over. Thank you very much, Nik and Julian. Thank you everyone for taking part this evening and listening. If you have any further questions, do tweet us or drop us an email to get in touch. And I hope that's given you some insight and maybe inspired you in some way to maybe look at applying for the blueprint. So thank you, everyone. We do have a recording of this, so it will be going up on YouTube at some stage if you want to recap it. And have a lovely evening, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
You.
Bye.
Bye.